Welcome to the Illuminate Universe podcast, The Cast. Get it? The Cast? My name is Alina, and I'm the founder of Illuminate, where we mentor job seekers and help employers to fast track their business goals. I interview a celebrity cast of incredible individuals who have truly inspiring careers. We're talking about their work journey, the process of taking the leap to create a life and career they love, and what happens when they push aside their fears and doubts to unleash their fullest potential. Today, we speak with Don Coulter on the future of work and career development. Don obtained credentials from Harvard Business School, NYU Stern School of Business, and the University of Toronto. He is an accomplished CEO and an incredible educator as well. Don started his career in PwC, KPMG, Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, before becoming a vice president for CIBC, executive vice president and chief financial officer for First Caribbean International Bank, chief executive officer for Coast Capital Savings, and president and CEO for Concentra Bank. Hi, Don. Thank you so much for coming onto our podcast. The first question that we have for you is, we thought we would go back to the very beginning of your journey. When you were going into university, did you already know what you wanted to do? What did you study? And how did your post-secondary program decision relate to your goals?
Well, Alina, thank you so much. And Richelle, thanks so much. Great to speak with you today. And great question. So when I was in university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do specifically. I knew I wanted to get a university degree. I thought that was a good move in terms of my future potential. And I had thought about different areas of business. I thought about teaching as well, but I didn't have any specific big goals in terms of what I wanted to do, just more generally. And I think part of it is because I didn't have a lot of family members who were doctors or lawyers or teachers or CEOs and things like that, business executives. So I just went to university. What did I study? Well, I started in mechanical engineering. And I did that for a while and then found that, really wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I switched to sciences and math and economics and ended up graduating with a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Math and Economics. And again, I thought about teaching. So I actually ended up doing some teaching at a private high school for about a year, just kind of part-time and on a temporary basis. I really enjoyed that. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. When I graduated, the economy wasn't very good. And so there weren't a lot of jobs for university graduates. And so I was doing odd jobs. I was working at a restaurant and a bar. I was a tennis instructor. As I said, I was teaching as well. And so I did that for a while, and I was happy to be doing that after university because university, you have lots of midterms, exams. It was nice to have a break from that. But after a while, I realized that working in a bar, teaching tennis wasn't where my long-term passion was. And so I ended up going back to school. I saw some of my friends who were doing more professional roles. A lot of them were going to law school or becoming chartered accountants, what we now call CPAs. And so I thought that might be an interesting route for me to take because it would provide me with a foundation in business, help me get more of a professional job, and then there'd be lots of options there as well. The truth is, when I was younger in high school, my real passions were athletics. So I played a lot of sports at an elite level. And I always wanted to pursue sports, whether it's as a player, as a coach, and things like that. But in university, I played on some varsity teams. But then, as I mentioned, ended up going back to school again. So I can tell you a little bit more about that, but I'll pause and push it back to you.
That sounds very interesting. It sounds like when you were younger, you were interested in a lot of different areas and you went out to explore and then eventually found your path.
That's right. Absolutely. I guess you could say I was more of a generalist than a specialist. Some people know when they're 9 years old that they want to be doing this profession. And for me, that wasn't really what it was like. I had a passion for, like I said, sports. I liked to learn. I liked school. I wasn't the best student, but I was okay. And as I got closer to university and high school, I knew I needed good grades to get into university. So I buckled down and worked hard then. But yeah, that's kind of what I did. I always sort of controlled. I tried to get good grades. When I got my first job, I tried to do, good job at the job. And I figured that if I did that, I'd be noticed. I'd get promotions. I'd be able to get advancement in my career. And that's kind of what happened.
I think that everything that you just mentioned also ties really well into where we are going with our next question, because you said you often had to pivot based on your interests, the economy, your age, and kind of the stress that you had been through and how you were feeling at that point in your life. So, as much as we try to set clear plans for ourselves, we know that things don't always pan out as expected. I'm wondering what inspires you and keeps you going and motivated for the future? And how do you keep up your energy and the drive to work hard and constantly do more?
Yeah, thanks, Rochelle. Great question. I think, first of all, on the premise to your question, we set plans and we set goals, but it doesn't always work out as it's expected. I think that's so true. So, as I mentioned, before I went back to school and became a chartered accountant, I worked at a tennis club teaching tennis, and a lot of the members there were successful retired business people. They were professionals, they were entrepreneurs and things like that, and I learned a lot just listening to them. One gentleman, I remember him even to this day, he told me that life is not a straight line. It's kind of a wiggly path that goes kind of this way, that way, and where you think you're going to end up for a lot of us is kind of unknown, and you can just meet somebody tomorrow who could change your life, or you could see some opportunity and make a different choice, and that could change your life as well. Some of the things that have happened to me have taken me to different countries and ended up me working with different organizations, meeting different people. Going to school, I went back to school again and did a master's degree later, and I met some great friends. And so things will happen that'll take you off that linear path. What inspires me, what motivates me, I think it's excitement for learning, and it's a real desire to grow. So I'm someone who's really happiest when I'm dealing with creating things and building new things with new people that are kind of special, extraordinary things that haven't been done before or are creating great benefit to people, as opposed to someone who maybe has, more of an interest in kind of maintaining the status quo, kind of a maintenance job. So for me, it's that passion to learn. It's the desire to build new things. I really like to learn. I have lots of books and I meet lots of people and I like to read biographies and things like that. So I'm inspired by building more in the future. In terms of energy, I think for me, I think part of it is being naturally endowed with energy. I'm kind of fortunate that way, but also mindset, I think. So if you're positive about things, if you have the right sort of glasses half full mentality to things and see the bright side of things, you naturally have more energy. In addition to that, physical fitness, mental well-being are really important. So I work out, do a lot of running, hiking, snowshoeing, skiing, weightlifting, love to play soccer and things like that. So I think the physical part of it, keeping yourself well, is important. And then balancing the mental well being too, right? So we all have strategies for that. I think for me, it's keeping things in balance, never thinking that any one thing is going to be so important that if it doesn't happen, everything else will fail. I never feel that way. I always am comfortable doing the best I can and then being at ease with myself with living with the consequences or the outcomes. I think that's important. I like to kick back and relax. I like to watch movies. I like to do fun things, reading books, hanging out with friends. You don't do as much of that now, of course, in the pandemic, but I think it's about that balance. I get inspired by other people. So I really look at what people have achieved, whoever it is. And I think, that's amazing. I think that kind of fires me up thinking if they could do that, maybe I can do something too. Right. So that also gives me energy and passion. So those are some of the things that keep me inspired and motivated.
I love that. It sounds like the lifelong learning approach has really driven you down a path of adventure. And considering you talk a lot about mental wellness, I actually have a follow up question. We know that you are an incredibly successful CFO and CEO at companies such as CIBC, Coast Capital Savings, and now Concentra Bank. Don, I'm wondering, how do you get work life balance? Because you probably have a very demanding career.
Yeah, I think it's about knowing in your heart, in your gut, are you happy? Are things going right? Because I think we all, throughout the course of the week, throughout the course of the year, you'll have points where you're getting more stressed. You can get those physical triggers. For some people, it's clenching of the jaw. For other people, they get thirsty, they need to drink, they're dehydrated. I think it's kind of being true to yourself. Are you happy? Are you feeling well? And when you're getting tired or when you're taking on too much, step back. Some people do meditation. I do a bit of that, stretching, breathing exercises. So I think it's first of all having that bigger perspective I talked about before of no one thing is going to be so important that if it doesn't go well, it's going to be catastrophic. Nothing. So you have to give yourself a break, be your own best friend, your own best supporter, and believe in yourself and believe that things are going to go well. But also, life is not just about work. If all you do is work, you're not going to be happy. So it's finding those pursuits, those things that you really love to do. For me, it's sports, spending time with my sons. This winter I've been snowshoeing a lot. I decided to pick up some snowshoes, bought some, and so with that, it was motivation for me to go through the tranquil forests and the snow falling down, going up hills, and your lungs are full of oxygen, your heart's pounding. It just feels really good. I think having lots of interest in finding out what your passions are, there's so many things that you can do that maybe you haven't tried before. So do some research. Maybe it's some cooking you haven't done. Maybe it's a language you want to learn. But I think it comes back to what I started with. It's know yourself if things are in balance or not, if you're happy or not, if you're getting too stressed. And so you have to kind of understand those signals. And then also having good friends, having someone you can talk to. We all need a best friend. We all need people who we can talk to. Even CEOs have best friends. It could be your family, it could be a friend, it could be your parents or whatever. But having someone that you can talk to and share your hopes and dreams, I think is really important. I think if you don't have that, then it's going to be harder to have the balance in life. But I think, again, mindset's important. And I think in some ways, you don't smile because you're happy. You're happy because you smile. So if you choose to be happy and joyful, I think you will be. It's kind of counter to what we think about sometimes, Alina, but I think it's actually true in a way, but we don't always think that way.
I completely agree. I think it's really important to have a perspective and balance that perspective in life. And I really liked what you talked about. The little things in life matter. And when we actually broaden our perspectives and know that our life is more than just about work, it actually brings to light the little pleasures in life and make our life even fuller and more meaningful.
I agree completely. That's well said.
I love that. And I also think in all of the things that you've mentioned, I'm getting a strong sense that people need to be well rounded. Like you said, your interests came from many different areas. Even today, you're still interested in many different things. And that well roundedness promotes better mental wellness and a whole bunch of different things. So I'm going to pivot just a little bit now and ask you about some leadership qualities. So I'm wondering, Don, in all fields, we know that strong leadership capabilities are becoming increasingly important. Do you think people are born leaders, or is leadership something that can be learned and developed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've had a career where I've started at the bottom, worked in mail rooms, I've done some very, very junior entry level jobs, and I've worked my way up to leading organizations. And so I really understand the asset of leadership and how important it is. And I'm definitely not a born leader at all. So for me, it's something that I think I've developed. I've developed it through necessity sometimes, where I've had to stand up figuratively and take charge of things that weren't going well. I have developed it through mentors, through watching great bosses and other people who have tremendous courage, great communication skills. They can tell stories really well. I've learned it through colleagues who are great at what they do. And so in my case, I'm not a born leader. I did have some fortunate things, although my parents were certainly not successful business people or professionals. They were very good people who taught me, I think, really good values and integrity. And I think that's gone a long way in terms of having the foundation of leadership. Because I think you have to believe in people who are leaders, or else they're not going to be effective leaders. And you only do that if they have credibility. And I think that others, though, I have met some people in my life who seem to be naturally gifted in terms of leadership. It just seems to come to them easy. When I was in university, I was selected to some business school competitions. And I remember one that I was in, the person who was selected as our CEO just seemed to have a lot of natural charisma. and was able to think really quickly. He seemed to come very easy to him. It could have been something that he groomed and learned in a long time, but I have no doubt that certain people are endowed with different types of assets. But I would sort of say overall, whether your starting point is one of more obvious leadership potential or attributes, or someone who's the furthest thing from a leader, you're going to have to work at it because leadership is a constant challenge. And I also think the best leaders, like I mentioned to you before, I like to read books, and I've read a lot of leadership books. One of the ones I think is fantastic is a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And he talks about the notion of the great companies that, this is kind of a dated book now, but he studied the best performing companies and he looked at the best leaders and he defined something called the level 5 leader. And the fifth leader had all the capabilities, the confidence of people, the ability to be just a single performer and a company leader. But the defining difference is that they were persistent and they had humility. So I think if you're persistent in life and you have humility, you can be a great leader too if you work at it.
So, my follow up question about leadership is we know that leaders today not only are persistent and are extremely humble, like you said, but they also care about how could the organization empower diversity and inclusion. So, I'm wondering, Don, for your organization, how does your organization approach diversity and inclusion, and what are your personal perspectives on it?
Yeah, so it's certainly a very timely thing right now. It's talked a lot in society with some of the big events that have happened over the last couple of years. And, for me, I think it's just such a wonderful thing, diversity, in that it gives you different perspectives on how people see things. We don't really know how other people perceive the world until we try to walk a mile in their shoes, so to speak. So I think diversity is something that allows your life to be more enriched personally. I think that it allows companies to get much broader perspectives and allows you to do better decision making, to have better perspectives. Inclusivity is actually a big part of leadership because the best leaders, if you've ever been on a sports team, the best captains were ones who made sure that everyone felt respected and everyone felt like they had a role. And the best captains made sure that people weren't feeling like they weren't included in part of what was happening. And I think when you look at organizations, inclusivity is so important to make sure that people feel like they can feel confident to show up to work as they are, their own best self, no matter what their sort of background orientation is. So at our organization, we really strive to have a diverse and inclusive culture when we are making decisions, when we're hiring people, when we look at the culture we want in the organization. We try to have a grassroots approach to getting people's perspectives on things. And that includes, what's your perspective on, if you were the customer of our company, how would you think about the way we're marketing this product? What are the unmet needs that you see in the marketplace? How we recruit, that's important as well. Personally, my own view is if you try to eliminate bias as much as you can, you'll end up hiring people based on their capabilities, their talent, their potential, and things like that. But of course, there's something talked a lot about today. It's unconscious bias. So we all have unconscious bias, and we've done unconscious bias training at my company. I've done it before in my life as well to try to eliminate that, so that when you're thinking about perspectives on strategy and execution, how to run the business, you are thinking in a diverse way and getting all the best considerations in mind to make the best decision.
Yes, as you said, this is a very timely topic, and inclusivity and diversity are so important today. You started to touch on recruitment, and that's kind of where I'm going with the next question. You also mentioned some of the most important qualities of a leader are charisma, confidence, persistence, and humility. When you recruit candidates to come into your organization, what are the attributes and characteristics you look for that really set an individual apart from others?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So I think that recruiting is so important. When I talk to people about what's important in business, is it the way you do marketing, the way you sell your product? Is it your risk management? What's the most important thing, whatever business you're in? And I think the most important decision that organizations have is recruiting. So the right people will get so many things done, and they'll bring talents and capabilities. So I look for people who have studied our company. They understand what we are about, not just in a generic way, but they've actually taken time to think about us and understand what our situation is. Look for people who will project to me and to other people that they work well with other people. They're respectful, they listen well. Again, diversity and inclusion is important for them because if you can't work with other people, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you're not going to be very effective. I look for people who have ambition for themselves, for the company, who don't just want the status quo. They think large, they think bold about what we can do. I look for people who have gone through some hardship or some challenges in their career that they've had to overcome because that's a blessing. If you've dealt with adversity and you've come out of it, you've actually developed capabilities of resilience, strength that's going to allow you to face that next challenge, which is inevitable in a real successful way. So those are things I look for. Obviously, integrity, education, experience is all important, but I look more for, what can you do as opposed to what have you done? Certainly what you have done is a great indicator of what you will do in the future. But some people have a certain spark, a certain way of just connecting. You can really see the person has great potential. And so those are some of the things that I look for in recruiting.
I love that answer. I think just within Illuminate, sometimes we work with a lot of different students. And two of the key things that we try to develop in our student leaders is the ability to understand others' needs and how to fulfill other people's needs while building a fulfilling relationship. So, like Don, you said, one of the key traits that you look for is the ability to get along with other people in the company. So, in my last job, I remember one of the partners told me one of the things that he was looking for is he would ask his team, would you be able to spend a whole weekend with this individual on a project? If you can't stand this person in the room, or if you can't get along with this person, perhaps it's not about whether this person's not capable or not, but it's rather about a fit. And everyone has a different style of working. It's just a matter of finding the right fit and the right balance.
I think that's really true. I think that different companies or schools or organizations like Illuminate and others, they'll have different culture, different fit. And not every company is for every person. Find the one that you feel yourself with, one that you feel comfortable with. And yeah, I think that's so true.
That's wonderful advice for any high school students who are going into their first position, or anybody who has also worked in the corporate world or in another industry and they're looking to make a shift. All of that is important information to consider.
Yeah, no doubt for sure.
Lovely. And Dawn, I'd like to end off with one last question. If there's one piece of advice you can give students today, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question and the hardest one yet.
We like to leave the hardest one for the last.
So, I've talked about learning and how that's important, right? And I continue to learn even at the stage of my career I'm at now. One of the things I learned probably about 5 years ago is coaching. So I used to think that coaching in a company setting was advice giving, where I would sort of take, or somebody would take their years of experience and they go, okay, here's what you do in this situation. If this happens, you do A. If this other situation happens, you do B or C. So you're just kind of telling them what to do. But I learned that that's not coaching at all. Well, coaching is leading the person in kind of a discovery of asking them questions so that they can figure out the solutions themselves, because what worked for me won't work for them. So I don't really want to give advice to young people. What I would encourage them to do, though, is to have confidence and build resilience. And if things don't go well, don't give up. There's so many people, Steve Jobs, a lot of CEOs who I worked with in companies had lost their jobs and they're unemployed. They came back and they got bigger jobs. Jack Ma of Alibaba, he had a lot of setbacks, applied to be a police officer, didn't get it, applied to Harvard, didn't get in. The one thing I would say is believe in yourself. Remember, it's a long game. Any little setbacks or things that seem to be big, they're not setbacks. They're just opportunities to learn. And the one thing that separates successful people, whatever that means, is the persistence to not give up. So that's not advice, but that's the one thing I would say. And you have so many amazing opportunities as a young person in the world today. There's challenges for sure. There's lots of change that's happening. But I think, again, it's back to being positive, Alina. I don't think ever in the history of the world has been more opportunity. When you see the growth and innovation and the things that are happening in the world. So embrace that, be confident, learn from your mistakes, and then have the persistence move forward, and you can't help but be successful.
I love that. That is such a piece, like a golden piece of advice. Thank you so much, Don, for coming onto our podcast.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. What a great honor to speak with you today. Thanks for the opportunity.